Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unleash Her. I'm Roberta, and I am your host for today's podcast. I'm so excited that you're here, and I cannot wait to introduce you to a beautiful new friend of mine, Miss Portia Booker. Hi, Portia.
Hello, Roberta. Every day is great that ends in Y. I extend my gratitude to you for inviting me on your show. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so this is going to be good. And you're really awesome, and I want everybody else to hear how awesome you are. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Ah, Roberta, you are too generous, first of all. And awesome is one of my favorite words. Every day is awesome when you're part of a team. And it's true. That was one of my mom's famous sayings is that there is power in numbers and there's a power in having a team, and you can't do it all alone. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Portia Booker. Some people know me as Portia the Producer. Other people also know me as Portia the Grief Grantor. I am your host of the Grief Grantor TV show on E360 TV, and also grew with Portia, my former radio show turned podcast. In the last couple of years, I've experienced several different losses. One of the biggest ones, of course, that you guys know about is my mother and also my father. And the other one is even myself at some points, right? Because when we experience loss, a lot of times we get so caught and stuck in the loss that we forget that life is still going on around us. And so, one of the things that has really helped me, Roberta, throughout my journey has been gratitude. Gratitude to me is one of those things that when you embrace it, when you encompass it, nothing is truly lost in this world, right? And I think when we have gone through loss, when we're grieving, we get to choose our grief journey. I'm going to say that again. We get to choose our grief journey because a lot of times we get so caught up in grief as doom and gloom. We have to feel guilty. We have to feel resentment. We have to be isolated from everybody. We have to feel envious of other people's celebratory moments. Like, for example, if it's your birthday and you're used to celebrating with your family and friends, but this year looks different because some of those key people in your life have transitioned, it's going to look different. And then the other thing too is a lot of people struggle with being frustrated, right? And then they feel guilty about that. And the other thing that I really want to touch on, Roberta, really quick is reminding everybody that you get to choose. You get to choose your grief journey. You get to be grateful for the person who was in your life, or even that job that you had to transition from, right? You also get to reframe how you see grief, reframe how you see anything in life. The other thing is you get to be innovative, right? Create your own narrative from that pain, right? We talk about pain to purpose. So be innovative in how you do it, and also learn to integrate your grief into your everyday life, right? Because if you don't, if you try to bury grief, what's it going to do? It's going to be like that pot that you keep pouring water into. It's going to keep boiling over, and then you're going to keep bleeding on people, right? The other thing is learn to be empowered in your story, right? There is so much healing that can take place from vulnerability and sharing your story, because really, what's so bad about what you've been through? I love to say this, Roberta, and I know I'm talking a lot, but I love to tell people that your story is not for you. I'm going to say that one more time. Your story is not for you. Your story is to help somebody else from stopping their dreams and goals from making their cemetery wealthier. They need to hear your story as the blueprint to help them to begin to live life again, right? And then the other thing is learning to forgive. We talk about forgiveness, and there's so many different definitions to what forgiveness looks like. But again, it goes back to what I said about choice. You get to choose how you forgive people. You can choose to forgive them and say, hey, washing you away, wishing you lots of love. I'm keeping it moving to the left, right? Beyonce song. Then some people want to embrace you with love. And you get to choose if you want to embrace them with love back, great. If not, that's okay. But you get to, at the end of the day, reframe and choose your grief journey.
Amen. Love it. Okay. I had to take a few notes there. Gratitude. Absolutely. If you cannot find something to be grateful today, anything, come on. Like there is got to be something in your life, no matter how bad your situation seems. There's always something. And I have to tell you a little story because, talking about just funerals and all of this is so heavy and you do feel like you have to grieve and loss. And I've already told my kids, I said, listen, I said, there will be no tears, no mourning, maybe a little, but whatever. But I want you guys to celebrate. It should be a celebration of life for the time that we were here. And so I've already told them exactly some things that I want them to do, music that needs to be played. And it may sound a little weird to some people, but it's important to me. And so I just felt like, I need to share that. This is my authentic self. This is what I want.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
Roberta, I want to touch on that really quick because
mhm,
I think again, we as a society, we're a grief avoidance society,
mhm,
right? We want to avoid grief. We want to avoid conversations around death. We want to avoid conversations about our final wishes. And my mom, before she transitioned, she was very transparent with us about what she wanted. She said, do not put a whole bunch of money in the ground to bury me, get me cremated. And so when my mom actually transitioned, yeah, it was an entire shock to my system. At the same time, I was able to honor what she wanted because I knew in advance, right? And then we didn't have a traditional funeral for my mom like we did for my dad. Instead, we made it somewhat like a party. We went to the lake and had food and music, and we did a balloon release and we celebrated in our own way. So I think to your point, like we need to understand and respect how other people grieve instead of continuing to put them in a box based on the societal narrative of how grief is supposed to be depicted. Grief is
mhm.
your own journey. Grief is your own expression, not everybody else's.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's so good. Yeah, and forgiveness, it's sometimes you don't realize, but if you're thinking, well, I think I forgot for have forgiven this person or myself for whatever that may be. I think the question is how do you feel about it? It's always the feeling because if you feel light, if forgiveness feels lighter, like, yeah, I have, then you're good, right? But if it feels really heavy, like, yeah, then maybe you haven't. I think a lot of times we have these things that we haven't dealt with and they're going to show up sometime in our lives. And you're just so amazing. And you're speaking of ability, of course, you're in TV and producing and all of that, so I can understand, but have you always been this way? Have you always been able to converse with everyone and be so confident? Because I need to know about that.
So I'll share a funny story with you, Roberta. When I was in J school, journalism school, I went to Kent State. Shout out to my Golden Flashes. When I was at Kent State, I had to try out to be on the newscast, which is TV2 inside of the school, TV2 newscast, flashcast. And believe it or not, Roberta, the very first time that I tried out, somebody was running the teleprompter in the studio. And I love to tell this story because people don't believe me. That they don't believe me that this happened. I read the entire teleprompter clearly. No flubs, nothing. But I wasn't used to having what's called an IFB in my ear where I could hear myself kind of like reverb when you're listening to a song. And so after I read the story, I got up from the desk and ran to the bathroom and hid in there. And my friend, my good friend, she came in the bathroom. She's like, Portia, because I was trying to hide like on top of the toilet so she couldn't see my feet under the stall. So she comes in there and of course she's like, Marco, I'm like Polo. And she said, Portia, what's wrong? You did great. You were just quiet, but you read everything completely fine. And even though I was nervous, that gave me a little confidence boost because then she also took me under her wing to work with me on my speaking ability so I could actually get the position that I wanted. And so I did both TV2 and Black Squirrel Radio, which is Kent State's radio online radio station. So I did both at the same time. And over time, trust me, Roberta, this I wasn't always this confident in my speaking ability. I didn't always believe in myself the way that I do now. And a key component to me building my confidence stemmed from loss because my mom was my biggest cheerleader. And a lot of people, when you lose somebody, it fractures you in so many different ways, especially your parents. Because I read this thing on Facebook last week that talked about how your parents, no matter what age you are, they provide this level of a shield around you when life is going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and you feel like you're not in control of things. They provide a level of protection for you. And then when they're gone, you're still yearning that. You're looking for that elsewhere and it's not readily available. And so I say that because when my mom transitioned, I had to learn how to really step up and advocate for myself because I was so used to my mom doing everything. And then I had to essentially let that version of me go, that version of me that was timid, that was afraid to speak up because assertiveness, let's be honest, Roberta, is frowned upon if you're a woman. If you're assertive as a woman, people look at you funny. They want to call you the you know
Mm-hmm.
what word. We'll leave
Mm-hmm.
that for another day. They
Mm-hmm.
want to call you that.
Mm-hmm.
And by the same token, I used to question my mom because my mom was very assertive. And I used to be intimidated by how she showed up in that way. But now I understand why. Because my mom was not afraid to go for what she wanted. And she was showing me using herself as an example of how not to be in the world. A closed mouth don't get fed. And after she left, after she transitioned, yeah, I was in the fog of my grief for a while. And this year, 2024, has been the hardest year for me because I'm more present with the permanence of my mom's transition in comparison to when the initial transition happened. I was still trying to wrap my head around, is this a dream or is this reality? And so my mom was one of the biggest people that really helped me to build my confidence because obviously her transition forced me to step up. Another person I want to pay homage to is my coach, Gail Flowers. God rest her soul. She was the one that ignited the fire in me to start doing video editing again. Because after my TV career, those of you who know my story about how when I landed my dream job at NBC and things were going great, kumbaya, and then the dream turned into a nightmare very quickly. I'll kind of spare you the story. But let's just say I almost jumped off of a bridge and died from a completed suicide as a result of that journey. And I didn't think I would ever touch anything media ever again after that scar from my TV career not going in the trajectory that I wanted to. Right. And Gail, one time, she said to me, Portia, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you go and shoot a commercial for your show, Grew with Portia? I understand you have a busy schedule, but if you can do it, great. If not, I understand. And I don't know what it was about her asking me, Roberta. It just ignited something in me like, I have to do this. I have to do this. And I'm glad that I did because it reminded me that no matter how much trauma, disappointment, heartache, pivoting, no matter how much of that tried to weigh me down, there was still that warrior within me that could still pull it off. So I went to the park, took my Nikon, my tripod, my lavalier microphone, and did the recording in 15 minutes. Didn't even take a script, nothing. I edited it, sent it to her, and that really opened me up to start doing media again, and attracting the people who I want as clients. I currently have 17 clients now, when originally I didn't even believe that I could be the one to work with so many amazing people from around the world. I didn't believe in me at all. And so to say this proudly and honestly is truly a miracle, and I'm forever grateful.
Wow, I love that because you had the basis of everything and you had your mom's support and you were on fire and then without her then you had to stand on your own. Learn to stand on your own. And so, we look at that and we're like, "Oh, at least you had at least you knew that feeling. You saw that from her and it took you standing on your own is so much more powerful and you're able to do things your way now. So you're back in the media and you can do it in your authentic, fun way. I just absolutely love that. And so what do you how do you help your clients?
Ah, that's a good question, Roberta. And somebody else, and the reason why I say it's a good question, because to me, a lot of people, majority of my clients have a grief story, and I can literally see it. They may not tell me directly what the loss is, and it's not
Mm,
always a physical transition. It's not always I lost my sibling, my brother, whoever. A lot of times the loss is from themselves by being in different spaces that they've outgrown, loss of time, friendships, all the other things you can think of, what we classify as disenfranchised grief. A lot of my clients have that type of loss in their life. And so I help them to grant themselves permission to grieve in their own way and convert that grief into a creative outlet.
I love that. I'm going to be honest, I never really even thought about, when I think of grief, I only think of death, losing someone. It's completely forever. And you're not like, but what happens to, we do have these relationships that end sometimes, and we don't realize how much they really affect us.
Yeah. Think about, Roberta, when you lose, I'll just say, a friendship, right? Friendship
Yeah.
breakups are a real thing.
Yeah.
And again, I don't care what other people say, words hurt
Hmm.
because words have power and words have meaning. And so you figure when you experience a friendship breakup or even the loss of a job,
Yeah.
I was met with, oh, just find another friend, just find another job. No, 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 no. You don't understand how much this role that I was married to essentially meant to me. So for you to just tell me to just find another friend, find another job, that's discrediting the hurt and the pain that I have. Right. And so when you feel that level of invalidation from other people, it makes you recluse to yourself. It makes you step away
Yeah.
because you feel as though, how can I express what I'm going through when nobody else is hearing me? Nobody else is honoring that grief. Right. And I tell all my clients all the time, honor your grief where you're at. Don't say sorry for unloading and dumping on me. I don't mind. I
Mhm.
don't. If my cup is able to hold it, I will. If not, I'll just tell you, hey, Portia's cup is empty. I don't have it today. But I think that the crux of this, Roberta, is the fact that with grief, we want to put it under one category. Grief only stems
Mhm.
from death,
Mhm.
but grief has so many different layers to it. And sometimes you grieve when you make a positive decision, when you decide to walk away from spaces that no longer serve you because you know that you're worth more. You know that you want genuine, authentic. So yeah, it hurts you to walk away because you wanted a relationship or some type of partnership in this space, but at the same time your heart knows that that's not where you need to be. And it hurts to walk away, but at the same time you'll thank yourself later because you'll see that that space was only a veil of illusion for you.
Yeah. And it's scary. Change is scary too. So to be able to understand and to handle that in such a beautiful way. I mean, we're here to for growth and expansion. So
Yes.
you got to let go of some things.
Yeah. There's I'm sure Roberta, you know this book, The Game of Life by Florence Scovel Shinn. That book is ancient. And my great grandmother used to quote different things from Florence Scovel Shinn in that book. And in the very first chapter of that book, she says, man is not your enemy, man is not your friend, for man is your teacher. So that equates to every single person, every single lesson, every single experience you have is showing you something. It's teaching you something. And this is why I'm so big on gratitude, because we learn the biggest lessons from from the deepest pain that we experience.
Mhm.
Right? So are we going to choose to continue to be a prisoner of our pain, or are we going to take that pain and actually use it? Use it and show others that you don't have to be stuck here. You can always pivot no matter where you're at. You
Yeah.
always have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you take your clients on a journey basically, and do you have certain are there like mantras or affirmations or journaling and gratitude, I'm assuming?
You know, Roberta, the biggest way
Huh.
that I really serve my clients is just allowing them to grieve in my space. And then we find a way for them to express it to their targeted audience, whether it's through a podcast, a
Mhm.
TV show, a
Yeah.
book,
Yeah.
a journal, even if it's just being guest on shows, right? If that's their goal. That's really what I do for them, is hold space, because people don't.
Mhm.
There's so many excuses in the book. And again, I understand we're all human. We all have our moments where our cup is empty. I get it. But by the same token, I always think about, Roberta, how after every funeral that I've been to this year, I've heard this phrase so many times and I'm almost ready to just like cringe about it. Why do we always get together when there's a funeral? Right? We hear this time and time again, and yet there's people right now who need support today,
Yeah.
even though the funeral was however many years ago.
Yeah.
Right? So I really create a safe space for them to grieve, whatever it is. It can be something that happened 10 years ago. It can even be something that, again, maybe the world will not accept as a level of grief. For example, I have a close friend right now who has children with unique learning accommodations. And so every day, this is her daily grief that she has, because one of her kids will not be able to get married. They will not be able to walk down the aisle or have children, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't think about those things when we're working with people, when we have people in our space. And so I don't ever mind when my clients need a moment to just vent. I don't. But by the same token, the one thing that I really pride myself on is holding that space for them and finding a solution together with them to share it with the world.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And you came to all of this happened really, after you going through this. So you have been through it. You know how it feels. You know this journey. And, when people say, is there a certain time limit to healing? or crying. So even, I'll have clients, I work in a hair salon as well. So people come in and they tell me everything, right? And so they come in and, if they, I just let them talk and they'll be crying. I'm like, shoot, I've cried. I've cried while doing their hair. So I'm like, we're helping each other. But there's, and so I allow that space for them to come in but don't apologize for that. It's okay. We
Hmm.
can't, we're not like scheduling our cries, and our hurt. And I think some people, because I feel like I am a very emotional person and the tears can just, sometimes they just won't stop.
And that's okay. And you need that sometimes. And I'm glad you brought up that point, Roberta, about does the healing ever conclude or do the tears ever stop? And I'm going to be honest with you and say no, they don't stop. However, they just change in their frequency because I'm at a space now in my grief with both of my parents. It's been 2 years for my mom this year, and this is the first year for my dad. I'm at a space now in my grief where I can talk about both of them without breaking down. I'm at a space where I can talk in many spaces and not break down. I'm at a space where I can listen to their favorite music, see pictures of them, watch videos of them, anything that I have without breaking down. At the same time, I recognize that during certain periods and certain seasons, like obviously 2024 is almost ending.
Mhm.
Obviously, we're about to hit the holiday swing. And so I can tell that my heartstrings are being tugged because sometimes going in the store, I see certain things that remind me of the change in my own life. For example, I know a lot of stores are they already have Christmas stuff out, right?
Yep.
And at times when I've seen that stuff, I have to walk the other way because immediately I can feel the tears forming behind my eyes. So being aware of that shows me the level of growth and expansion that I have in my grief journey. And what really helps me, Roberta, on a daily basis is gratitude. Every single day, I write in my gratitude journal, even for these tough moments. Like when both of my parents transitioned, the day after, I wrote dedications to them in my gratitude journal. Even at my father's funeral, I went an hour early before everybody else showed up, and it was just me and him in the room. And I wrote in my gratitude journal about how grateful I was for him and his life. Right. And that helped me to really deliver the reflection at his service because I didn't know what I was going to say, had no idea, considering that it had only been 9 months prior that my mom passed away.
Yeah.
And now I'm speaking about my dad. Right. So to go back to your original point about does the healing ever conclude and does the tears ever stop? The answer is no. They evolve. And you have to give yourself permission because some days it'll hit you like a ton of bricks. It will. I remember the same year my mom's transition actually. I was speaking not a retreat. I was at a leadership conference in St. Louis. It was November of 22. And I remember after the award ceremony of this leadership thing, I remember going back to my hotel and I cried my eyes out on the floor. Cried. I cried my eyes out because seeing other people and their families celebrating them reminded me of what I was missing.
Mm.
Right. But at the same time, I had to give myself the space and permission to let those emotions out. Right. Because if you don't, it has to come out somehow. Right. There's nothing wrong with crying. I had an issue with crying for a while. I did. I'll be honest. A lot of my grief was anger based. Trust me, trust and believe me, Roberta. In my book, Finding Grace Within Grief, Her Transition, My Transformation, there's two
Yeah.
open, honest letters that I wrote to God. And I'll be honest, I used some fine uses, colorful keepsakes, if you catch my drift.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
you know, I was honest, but I needed to let the God of my understanding know that I was not happy.
Yeah.
And he still loves me.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Portia, you speak with so much maturity, confidence, and since I'm a little older than you, I can say, you're a baby. Wow. Gosh, I'm just so proud of you. And I could listen to you speak all day. I'm sure everyone else is thinking the same thing. So I have to tell you, this is the reason why I started a podcast because I'm like, all right, I want to be a better speaker. Well, how am I going to do that? You need to speak some more. And it may not be on a big stage. It can be right here. This is speaking. This is conversing. This is really helping me gain my confidence and step into the new version of myself. And so I know we can just really probably say the same words today because we're on the same journey. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for showing everyone too, like what grief can look like, you know? And I'm going to tell you, I mean, I still have my parents. And as a matter of fact, today, my dad turned 85.
Happy
And
birthday to
so
your dad.
yes, thank you. And then I'm like, Dad, you only have 15 more years and you can make it to 100. I think he was like, oh, I don't know about that. I mean, he still works. He's amazing. And it's just such a great motivator to myself. So yeah, anything you want to say about that? Like for you, is it just the more that you would do, more practicing and speaking more helps you become a better speaker.
So, first of all, again, Roberta, I extend my gratitude to you for inviting me on your show. Second, happy birthday to your dad, 85. Keep it going. Keep it going. I mean, obviously, love him, cherish him, ask him all the questions you can about life because I'm sure he's got plenty of stories. I'm sure.
Yeah.
And as far as building on your speaking ability, I'm a firm believer the more that you read and the more that you practice, the better you get. And
Mm.
laugh at yourself when you fumble over a word, right?
Mhm.
And just be you, right? You'll find your rhythm, you'll find your footing. One of the things that I always do when I'm hosting my show is I do a warm up every time. So I always take time to write out what I want my intro to be for my show. Like, let's say if I'm interviewing you, right? I know part of your story, you and your daughter. By the way, I had an opportunity to listen to her music. She sounds amazing.
Oh,
And if I know who I'm going to have, I find a way to integrate a piece of my story to connect with my audience and also honor you as the guest, right? So if I just happen to have you and your daughter on my show, the common denominator in both of our stories is grief,
yeah.
right? There's some grief in your story, your daughter's, and mine. So I would find a way to weave that into my intro and introduce you, right? And then I practice it. I don't use like a script when I'm on camera or when I'm doing shows. I don't use a script. And a lot of times, all the questions that I have, I do my research, read your bio, look through your social media, and I come up with questions organically that I really want to know that I know the audience may not think of to ask you. And then I just go with the flow. I listen to what you say, and a lot of times I don't even go through the questions that I write down if I do write down four or
Mhm.
five because you say something and immediately my brain is like, oh, I want to ask this, I want to ask this, I want to ask that. So in conclusion to what you're asking,
Mhm.
read and practice. I think you're on the right track, Roberta. Just keep going. People love your show. Obviously, you invited me on. I'm honored. I know that you've had several people who we both know and comment on your show, and it'll take you far. It will. As long as you know in your heart that you're doing it because you love it and not for the money, you'll go far. 100%.
Yes, this is amazing. So I really struggled with starting the podcast. And earlier I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. That sounds like a lot of work.
It
And
is.
so this it can be. So this year I'm like, no, we're going to give it a try and let's see what happens. And do you know what? I'm doing things my way. There are no rules. I'm sorry. And for anyone that, if you hear a little this or that, nope, I have done almost zero editing because it is not, it's just not, how do I want to say this? So it's just not part of my
You're
life right now.
unscripted. You want to be authentically and
It's
genuinely
real.
unapologetic. Yeah.
Yes, it's just real. It's just real life. And we pause, and so the editing thing, was one of the things that was going to stop me. And I'm like, nope, no, we're just going to do it. We're going to put it out there and people are going to love it and people may not like it. And if they don't, I really don't care. So it is what it is. But it's doing amazing. Thank you so much. Over 20 countries now people have listened to this podcast and I never would have imagined. And I thank you. I didn't go in this thinking, how much money am I going to make from it? That wasn't it. And so it's turned into this beautiful thing. And I am more proud of this, I think more than my book that I wrote, which is absolutely crazy. So we just don't know, but you got to get past the part of it's too difficult, I'm afraid, or whatever that may be. Okay. So, and here you go, guys. At the end of this podcast, here comes the sweeper. I am in the conference room. Yep, I'm gonna put this in here just to let you know. I'm in the conference room. They're running the sweeper. You may hear, you may not. And but we're at the end of this, and I know y'all have enjoyed it because Portia is absolutely amazing. And is there anything else you would like to say before we end the podcast?
Again, Roberta, thank you so much for having me on. And I would just say to your audience, don't let perfection be
Mm,
your prison cell. Seriously. Don't let perfection be your prison cell. As Roberta said, just start where you're at. You'll get better over time. Consistency and give yourself a shot, right? Bet on you for once. I always ask my friends, some of my friends are always messaging me like, Portia, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to write that book. I want to go to this school. And my main question to them is, what is the hurt?
mm,
What is
mhm.
the hurt?
Yeah, I
Nothing
love it.
beats a failure but a try.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So beautifully said. Thank you again. It has been a pleasure. And I'm sure that we will be having some beautiful conversations in the future. I appreciate you. And you guys, if we can help you in any way, please reach out. Okay. Thank you again, Portia. And thank you all for coming today. And, like my grandma used to say, because I guess she didn't like goodbyes. So instead of goodbye, it's see y'all later.
Peace and hair grease, y'all.